Good morning. My name is Ben Connelly. I am a senior teacher here at MinnesotaZen Meditation Center, or here you could say my house. I'd just like to welcome, I believe we have a bunch of members from Compassionate Ocean Dharma Center visiting and joining us today. So thank you all for coming, and at least one person from Hokyoji Zen Center. So how wonderful. Thank you for being here. And today I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker, Chimyo Atkinson. Chimyo received Dharma transmission under Reverend Teijo Munnich in 2015. Teijo Munnich, some of you may know, received transmission from Dainin Katagiri, our MZMC founder. So Chimyo is like our Dharma cousin, and so that is quite sweet. And Chimyo received her monastic training in Japan and in the US. She currently serves as head of practice at Great Tree Zen Women's Temple in Alexander, North Carolina. And Chimyo is also on the board of the MinnesotaZen Buddhist Association, which is a national association of Soto Zen priests. I'd just like to say, on a personal note, one of the reasons I was excited that we were inviting Chimyo here is I've met Chimyo a couple times at Soto Zen Buddhist Association conferences and just been really struck by kind of a quiet, embodied authority that I have noticed and benefited from just being near. So I am really, really happy that we have Chimyo here. And I would like to invite you all to welcome her with a bow. Thank you for being here, Chimyo.
Thank you for inviting me. It's wonderful to see all these faces. I'm glad you when you made that introduction that you talked about Teijo, because MinnesotaZen Center, even though I've not been to MinnesotaZen Center often, is very much a part, an influence in the practice here. And I've heard about so many of you through Teijo. So it's just wonderful to be here. I was out there at Hokyoji, and I didn't get to visit Minnesota, but I saw some of your colleagues out there, and it is very much like family, even though we don't see each other often. So thank you very much for having me. Yeah, we're here in Great Tree in North Carolina, where nobody wants us to come visit them because, yeah. But we've been hunkered down, and we've been kind of talking about the precepts for 1.5 years now in preparation for doing we have Jukai every 2 years, and this was the year we were supposed to do it in April. And we keep having to postpone it. Right now it's postponed all the way to September. So we keep talking about the precepts, which is not a bad thing. But in talking about the precepts, last year we talked about the Eightfold Path. We have a theme for each year here at Great Tree. We talked about the Eightfold Path. And right now, what's going through my brain and my practice is this coming to a more deeper understanding, or trying to come to a more deeper understanding of how the Eightfold Path and the Bodhisattva vows are basically the same, and how they're guiding us in the same direction. You know, look at my notes here. What the most recent thing that I've been looking at is how we can use the precepts in our practice. It's not so much doing the precepts as absorbing them in the way that we do when we look at the Buddha's teaching and try to put it on the ground, try to take it out of our heads and put it on the ground. Not so much doing, but embodying them, knowing them, being what is essentially our true Buddha nature once we do that, or if we can do that, as much as we can do that. And one of the things that I started looking at was the way, I was looking at the 10 prohibitory precepts, or the 10 grave precepts. And it struck me at one point when I was looking at them that 4 of the 10 have to do with speech and what comes out of our mouths, right speech, wholesome speech. And I thought that was interesting because, it's right speech. The vows tell us, we're meant to say, not to speak falsely, not to speak ill of others, not to slander others and extol ourselves, not to disparage the Dharma. That's a lot. And it's not just talking, of course, about simply what comes out of our mouths, but what forms in our heads, how we speak to ourselves, and how that has an effect in the world, how it has an effect on other beings, on all sentient beings. We move in the world with speech so clumsily. So much of our delusion gets spun out in speech. So much of our fear is spun out in speech, And I think of myself, I think, sometimes it feels like no matter where it's coming from, whether I'm talking about something, mundane, or whether I'm talking about, trying to give a Dharma talk or whatever, sometimes it just feels like screaming. It just screaming out all my delusion and all my frustration and all my fear. Almost out of control, no matter how much control I think I have. It's one thing to sit and prepare for a talk and prepare what you're going to say, but even in that, the fear and all of that is revealed in some way. And so we have to be careful with what we say. We have to be aware that that word we just wasted a breath on resonates somewhere against someone or to someone or something. And it's hard to keep that in mind. there's a word that floats around, or it's been floating around for the past, I don't know, few cycles of media, snowflake. I think what's intended when we use this term sometimes and this is in a harmful way, is to say that those who speak out when they're suffering are somehow not strong, or they're just complaining, or they're just kind of dismissing whatever that suffering is, because it's somehow not relevant. It implies that what the daily stings and barbs, slings and arrows that we throw so carelessly around, whether it's some kind of discrimination or aggression, whether it's injustice, whether it's a joke, that these things are sort of inevitable things that, we need to suck up because, that's just the way the world is. I say something that is harmful, or I tell some untruth, or some lie is written in a history book, or some child is made fun of. Suck it up, because that's just how it is. I'm a little tired of, that attitude, because that's not just how it is. It says not to speak falsely, not to speak ill of others, not to slander others or extol oneself, not to disparage the Dharma. It says that. So what are we doing? By ignoring the effect of what we say, and ignoring not just the effect of what we say on others, but on ourselves. And that it just feeds. We're just feeding our delusion. We're just feeding our own fears and so on. So I'm really annoyed at that word snowflake. It ignores the fact, snowflake is an absolute simile for our existence. It's a very, very fragile, very ephemeral, beautiful thing that comes together, that manifests based on the conditions around it. Its shape and its uniqueness formed by, water, rain, by the temperature and the climate, all of these things, just like we are, and it's free falling through this universe, just like we are, and changing and drifting, you know, just like we are, until it finally hits the earth, touches the earth, and dissolves, just like we do. What the hell is wrong with that? Why is that? You know, if I acknowledge those qualities in all beings around me and in myself, the vulnerable, you know, ephemeral sort of thing, you know, might I choose the words a little more carefully? Might I figure out what the right action is, and might my intentions be influenced by that acknowledgement of something so mundane and yet unique, and once in a lifetime, once in a kappa, you know, sort of thing that, you know, that we all are. Wouldn't I be a little bit more careful? You know, but yet, snowflake, really, really annoyed at how we use that word, how we're using that word these days. In the Abhaya Sutra, you know, is the Buddha speaks to a prince named Abhaya who comes to him, and, you know, in the way that we do, we want to catch somebody out. He comes with this question about how the Buddha, you know, if can the Buddha say an unkind word? You know, wouldn't the Buddha be trapped in language that is only kind and endearing? What's the word they use? Yeah, endearing. Yeah. And beneficial when dealing with sentient beings. Can you only say the nice thing? Buddha should only say the nice thing. Should only say things that would make him look good or make you feel good. And the Buddha answers him with these six sort of situations in which one should speak. You know, first of all, the Buddha says, no, do not say only those things that make people feel good or make them feel good about me or themselves. I try to say, you know, the thing that is most compassionate and beneficial, you know, in the same way that if, you know, he uses the analogy that if you see a child put something in its mouth that is going to choke, that could possibly choke on or poison itself with, do you sit and, you know, smile at the child, or do you grab the child and put your finger in his mouth and pull that poison or that dangerous thing out? And he talks about this in relation to speech and how we talk to people. And he says that in the same way, Prince, as pulling the dangerous thing from a child's mouth because you care for the child. In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be unfactual, untrue, unbeneficial, or not connected with the goal, unendearing, and disagreeable to others, he does not say them. In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be factual, true, unbeneficial, unendearing, and disagreeable to others, he does not say them. In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be factual, true, beneficial, but unendearing, and disagreeable to others, he has a sense of the proper time for saying them. In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be unfactual, untrue, unbeneficial, but endearing and agreeable to others, he does not say them. In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be factual, true, unbeneficial, but endearing and agreeable to others, he does not say them. In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be factual, true, beneficial, and endearing and agreeable to others, he has a sense of the proper time for saying them. Why is that? Because the Tathagata has sympathy for living beings. Now that's a particular translation, but you get the gist. And here, it's like, of the 6, 4, he does not say them. He does not speak. And in 2, he has to have the proper sense of when to say them, whether it's true, beneficial, agreeable, not agreeable, all of these conditions. So that's not really a prescription. It all depends. What should we say? When should we say it? Why are we saying it? All that all comes down to the Eightfold Path again. It's and because just like the Eightfold Path and the precepts, these are not a prescription. It doesn't tell you exactly what to do. How do you know what to do? How do you know what to say and when to say it? Are you sitting there, parsing every situation, before you open your mouth? Nothing would happen if you did. What the Buddha says to Abhaya, when Abhaya says, how do you know what to say? Do you have a set answer for everybody that comes in front of you with a question, or every situation in which, there may be some question of truth and what does he say? Truth and beneficial and all that. How do you know? And the Buddha says, basically, I know because it's in me. It is me being with the Dharma. What does he say exactly? The property of the Dharma is thoroughly penetrated by the Tathagata. From this thorough penetration of the property of the Dharma, he comes up with the answer on the spot. And it's a penetration of the precepts, the vows that we're practicing. It's not simply a doing. It's allowing that to be, to come up as our true nature, such as it is. I'm not going to keep going on too long, but and that's what practicing with the precepts is. It's, every day trying to allow that to penetrate us. allow that to, and that penetration comes with the understanding of what our true nature is and what our true connection is to the rest of the world and to all beings. You know, you're not saying anything different, you know, or I'm not saying anything different when I recite the Bodhisattva vows, whether it's at Jukai or Ryakusatsu, whatever. Those vows, you know, they all through everything, you know. You say them again and again. You say them in ordination, you say them at Jukai, you say them at, you know, Dharma transmission, you're saying it all the time, you know, we say these all the time. There's a reason for that, you know, where it shows up everywhere in this practice, in our ritual. It's there when we say the 4 vows, you know, what does that mean to save all sentient beings? What does that mean? It's set to, it's the, you know, it's there in the Eightfold Path, which is the first and basically the only teaching the Buddha ever really left us. It's right there. And yet, it's why it's so difficult. And this is what we're practicing every day. This is what we're practicing on the ground every day, is this. And I'm just talking today about right speech, but all of it, you know, all of it is the path. You know, I've recently gotten into barefoot shoes, you know, and we're always trying to protect ourselves in some way instead of really, really feeling and absorbing what it are, you know, not just, you know, our partly our senses, you know, with our senses, but also with our inner selves, you know, to kind of protect that. And that's another place where that snowflake comes from, because we all feel this tenderness and vulnerability, and we want to cover it up with shoes. You know? So we can't feel the ground. We can't connect. We don't want to be directly connected with it. You know, we don't want the cooties of others to mess with this delusion that we have of contained selfness. Just like with shoes, you don't want to feel the ground. We don't want to be discomforted. We don't want to be, inconvenienced. We don't want to really feel that connection and not feel special and held and whatever. It reminds me, you know, going off on another tangent, sorry, you know, this mask thing, this idea of the mask. When I think about it, you know, and, you know, yeah, y'all can accuse me of being in my head. Because
I can't hear.
Did we, Chimyo?
Yeah, it looks like we've lost our speaker here.
We do have a little bit of a problem with our internet sometimes. Always inconvenient. But I don't know where I left off at this point, but seeing as we're getting, how long have I been talking? Maybe about half an hour. I'll just close to here to just say, to read something from Dogen regarding speech. In the Bodhisattva Shishobo, Dogen writes, kind speech means when meeting living beings, first of all, to feel love for them and to offer kind words. This means that there will never be violent or malicious words. And by violent and malicious words, I think he means words with the intent to harm. Kind speech is talking to beings with the same compassion as if they were little children. It is by practicing kind speech that kind speech develops and grows. Remember, kind speech arises from a loving mind, and the source of a loving mind is compassion. Right speech has the power to turn the heavens upside down. It is not merely the power of compassion. So really, in conclusion, it's watching ourselves, watching our speech. I sometimes feel like I want to take a vow of silence. I can definitely see the advantage of doing that. What if I could limit myself to the 40 words, spoken, just like on, Twitter or whatever. What words would I choose to say? What words would really be important enough for me to say in a day if I only had 40 to speak instead of the thousands, spew out all day long so carelessly. So thank you. And